So I'm really pleased to introduce Ann Gates. She's been a member of the Puget Sound Book Artists since its inception 10 years ago. This is our 10th anniversary. She served on our board. She was our vice president, and she was the lead curator for an annual exhibition and then a member of the group for another year. She received her Bachelor of Arts from Michigan State University, and she began her art career as a ceramic artist, and more recently has developed interests in photography, book arts, and the connection between art and science. Her work has been shown in the Puget Sound Book Artists exhibitions and in many invitational exhibitions that have been shown throughout the Pacific Northwest. Currently, she's working on the Science Stories project with Rochelle Gander-Rude and doing a book about Tacoma's drinking water and how it gets from the mountain to her faucet. She has completed 2 international residencies, one in Assisi, Italy in 2016, and more recently, one in La Maison Verte in Marnay-sur-Seine in France in 2019. I'm really intrigued with Ann's idea of using the artist residency not only to further her own artwork, but to combine it with the experience of international travel and to widen her circle of fellow artists to include artists from different countries. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Ann.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn on the presentation. Is it big on your screens?
So if you're in speaker view, it should be big on the screen, and she'll start the show.
I'm almost there.
There she goes.
Well, hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to see you all. Like others have said, it's just been a long time since I've seen you. Thank you for joining Lucia and me today. I'd like to tell you about my artist residency in France last year. Let's see, here we go. This is La Maison Verte, the greenhouse, where I lived and worked for the month of June. I had applied for the residency 6 months before I wanted to be there. After I was accepted, I planned my trip to include a stop in Paris for a week with 2 friends before going to Marnay. I'd never been to Paris before, and I wanted to see everything, including the museums. After all the art I saw in Paris, I was primed for my 1-month residency in a French village of 248 people. Marnay-sur-Seine is 35 miles east of Paris on the Seine River. I took the train from Paris, and the director of the residency picked me up at the train station. His name is Guillaume Riby, and he and I had had several emails back and forth to make these arrangements. Why did I pick Marnay-sur-Seine? I had wanted to visit France, and I knew I wanted to be in a place that had access to the outdoors. I had wanted to include gel printing in the books I made in Italy in 2016, but that just hadn't worked out. So I wanted to be sure to use gel printing in this next residency project. Seeing that a botanical garden was part of this residency seemed perfect. These are my cohorts. On the left, Jenny, in the middle, Paula, and seated is Ashley. In our kitchen, great place it was. This is Jenny, her full name, Virginia Rogon Chavez. She's a printmaker and chair of the art department at the University of Mississippi. She was using part of her sabbatical for this residency. She had planned ahead and brought a very small metal plate with her for printing. She had also printed a few layers on the papers she would use at the residency. She also brought small pieces of prints that she'd made at home. She gave me good advice about how to add the name of my book to the cover, the line, the title. is Ashley, drawing and their home in Oxford, Mississippi. Ashley used a technique I'd not seen before. He called it subtractive. He's using it in the photograph on the right. He would fill in a rectangle on a piece of paper with graphite, and then erase some of the graphite to create an image. On the left is his painting of Guillaume. It's just how I remember him. The hat and the cigarette were nearly always nearby. This is Paula Janine Bennett. She's also on this call. We may get to talk to her later. She's a mixed media artist from New York City. Here she is standing in the attic of La Maison Verte. At this residency, she created her Seine collections and an installation, The Stolen Thing, based on a poem she had written. She's also a drummer with the Juilliard dance program. Ginny and Ashley had friends in the village and spent much of their time together, which left Paula and me doing quite a few things on our own. Paula seemed to have nonstop energy for creating. She would almost run up and down the stairs when she had an idea she wanted to pursue, but had the materials for it somewhere else. Paula is a live out loud person, and her friendship is an enduring gift. Guillaume Raby is hiding behind that bottle of beer. He's the director of both the residency program and the botanical garden. He is the first Frenchman that I ever got to know, and only a little bit. He spoke usually of facts and was ferocious about ecology and climate change. He wouldn't elaborate unless I asked questions. So I asked anything from how much of the energy in France comes from nuclear power plants to monoculture used in farming. On the right, we're having aperitifs before the gumbo dinner that Ashley invited people to attend. We four artists lived at La Maison Verte, and La Maison Verte is also the name of the residency. The house was built before 1850. It has 3 large bedrooms upstairs and 2 large studios downstairs. Jenny and Ashley shared one of the downstairs studios, and I had the other. There's a smaller studio off the front bedroom with access from that bedroom, and Paula used that studio. On the left is the front door to the house, and on the right is the upper hallway looking right into Paula's studio. And yes, the bathroom was on the first floor, so we went up and down those stairs a lot. And the bicycles, I think there were 3 bicycles. Really only 2 of them were in working order, but I did a ride around town on one. We shared the kitchen and 1 bathroom. We had a small washing machine in the bathroom. We hung our clothes and sheets outside on a line. It was called the greenhouse because of one of its earlier owners, buildings in Marnay are not permitted to be painted. This fellow got drunk one night and painted the house green as a symbol of his independence. There was talk of removing the stucco and just showing the stone, but that idea seemed to have very low priority. And here's my studio. It was huge with 2 tables. It was more space than I'd imagined. So I luxuriated in spreading out my work. It was especially nice when I was printing. The kitchen was certainly the gathering place. We started out talking about rotating cooking, but as we all had different schedules, we ended up sharing cooking just on Saturday evenings. That worked out beautifully. Ginny made roast rabbit, Paula experimented with honeys and rhubarb from the market, and I contributed roasted white asparagus in one of my favorite pasta dishes. Ashley made gumbo for several people from the village, and here we are in the back garden enjoying gumbo and each other. The botanical garden was my inspiration for the work I did at this residency. The garden covers almost 5 acres and we had 24-hour access to it. The photo on the right shows the gate we could access with our own key. One of the requirements for being a botanical garden in France includes there being an educational program. As director of the garden, Guillaume taught many different groups of school children about the plants and how they might be used. Another requirement for having a designation as a botanical garden is that plants are labeled. I'll talk more about that later. These are a few more of my photographs of the garden. My initial interest was in choosing leaves I thought would make good prints. But it was June, and the beauty of the garden couldn't be ignored. Photo on the left is Nigelia, or commonly known as love in a mist. And on the right, I was in the garden admiring the full moon beside the tall artichoke plant. I made an edition of 4 books called The Leaves of the Botanical Garden of Marnay-sur-Seine. I used the crown book structure that Haiti Kyle included in her book, The Art of the Fold. I used Kozuke paper for the interior pages that I purchased while at home from Linda Marshall of Washi Arts. Photograph on the left, I'm carrying that paper in the red tube over my shoulder at the airport in France. The photos in the middle and the right are me trying to find the art supply store down one of the covered passages in Paris, where I purchased paper for the covers of my books. I had mailed my tools about 2 weeks before my departure and included enough gelatin to make 2 gel plates. I began by creating prototypes. I learned a lot about the structure from this and how the papers worked inside it. I also painted the covers with gouache and then later sprayed them with fixative. I collected leaves over several days and pressed them lightly under books. I was so excited about the leaves on the right. I was sure they were going to make the most beautiful prints, and the leaves were just too soft. They left no impression. I was disappointed, but everything else seemed to work well. It was time now to begin printing. Gelatin printing is a printing technique using a plate made of very strong gelatin, like really tough unflavored Jell-O. Using a brayer, you spread a light coating of ink over the surface of the gelatin and place a flat object, in my case, leaves, directly on the ink. You then lay a sheet of paper over that and rub gently with your fingertips, which will pull ink from around the leaves on the plate. Once you remove that first sheet of paper and the leaves, the ink that was under the leaves remains, showing details of them. You then place a second sheet of paper on top of this remaining ink and rub again with your fingertips. When you remove the paper, you have an image from the remaining ink. These second printings are called ghost prints. And these are what I chose to use for my book. I had a few problems along the way. I wore out my first plate after about 100 prints. I used the remainder of the gelatin I had mailed it to make the second gel plate, and then I spilled it, messing about with it before it was set. I needed more gelatin, so I took the bus to the grocery store in the nearby town, Maison-sur-Seine. After several very kind people tried to help me find gelatin, they understood that what I wanted was gelatine. Theirs comes in sheets. Here I am having fun with one of those sheets. I'd not used this before, so did quite a bit of calculating to determine how much to use to make one plate. And interestingly, after using the sheet gelatin, I thought the prints were more defined, better maybe. And then I tore the third plate, trying to get it out of the pan. I told Paula about it. After fussing and fuming for quite a while, I decided I would cut off the torn part of the plate and use what was left. This meant I could only print one set of leaves at a time instead of two at a time as I'd been able to print with a full plate. And then I completed the printing for all 4 books in the edition with a few extras in case I needed them. That was more than 160 prints. When I made the concertina folds that create the spine of this structure, I observed a creeping slope developing. I thought my whole project was ruined. I took a deep breath, told Jenny about it, took a walk around the village, and then moved on to the next steps of creating the folds that hold the interior pages. The slope disappeared. Now I was ready to add pages and the title labels to my books. Paula came by just as I had completed all 4 books and was enjoying seeing how well they turned out. I do look kind of self-satisfied there. What I learned was to use what I have, to go ahead and try something. That was really the best advice to myself from this project, to just go ahead, try it. My final problem was naming the plants I had chosen from which to make prints. In thinking about the book before I went to France, I pondered what names to use. The French common name, the American common name, or the scientific name. At one point, I even considered using all 3. I still hadn't decided when I was printing the leaves. I had been pretty good about taking photographs of the plants I thought would make good prints, together with their names. And then I seemed to go astray. After I'd finished printing, I set about matching the print to the photograph I'd taken in the garden, but that left several unknowns. I was able to identify a few more from the books at La Maison Verte, but I still had a few without names. I had been told in correspondence with Guillaume before the residency that the founder of the botanical garden, Didier, would be available to help me identify plants. I asked Guillaume several times about arranging a time to meet with him. I finally decided that it would just have to be all right to not list the names of the plants in my books. Then the afternoon of the day of the presentation of our work, the last day all 4 of us residents would be there, Didier came in and said, "Let's do it." It was very hot, in the mid-90s at least. I didn't want to move, but thought this was a good opportunity. After looking at my prints, Didier thought we should go to the garden. We traipsed around in the garden in the heat and were able to identify all but 3 of the 32 plants I'd used. And here's a listing of plants in order, showing only 3 without a full name. Marnay is a commune. It's a level of administrative division in the French Republic. It is similar to our townships or parishes. Communes have a great deal of independence in ruling themselves. They have a mayor and village council. In Marnay, they are not permitted to build outside the existing village perimeter, and they had also banned the use of pesticides and herbicides. On the left is the home of the one farmer in the village. There are barns on either side of the open area. There was little traffic in Marnay, but at least once a day you'd hear the tractor going down the street. On the right, you see an addition being built to the cafe. The carpenter is skilled in using the traditional medieval building methods. The building in these photos is right on the Seine. It had been used as an artist residency for a few years, but had been sold to an individual who lived in Paris before I could get there. This would be his weekend home. The villagers were disappointed as this meant he would not really be committed to the community. In the photograph on the right, a little above the middle, you can see a small boat That's actually a regular sized rowboat. And along there is a swimming beach that people used. June was also hollyhock time. They were blooming everywhere. They were just beginning to bloom at the bottom of the stalk when I got there, and they were nearly finished at the top of the stalk when I left. On the right, you see the red poppies in the old cemetery. Poppies grew in profusion all around the area, and they inspired much of Jenny's work. The church is the Abbey of Saint Denis. It was constructed in the 12th century, destroyed by the religious wars in the 16th century, and consecrated to Our Lady of the Assumption in 1634. The first week we were there, Paula had asked permission of the priest to place her installation in the church. He agreed, and she felt he understood what she hoped to evoke in people seeing it in the church. She'd invited me to go along the first time she went to look at the interior of the church. That's her looking up in the photo on the left. The bestiary was one of my favorite things there. It's the first one I've ever seen in place. There are no restaurants in Marnay, so the cafe was the place where people gathered to relax and connect with each other. It was open 3 evenings a week as well as Sunday afternoons. They had coffee, beer, wine, and mixed drinks, and some snacks, including a carrot salad that I later learned was a staple French bar item. The owner of the cafe is Mathilde. You can see her in the green dress in the photograph on the right. She sponsored the first ever Fête de la Musique in Marnay. Fête is celebrated all over France on the summer solstice. Paula worked with locals to create a drum ensemble that named themselves the Naughty Carrots, after the oddly shaped carrots they'd found at the cafe. And there they are in the photo on the right. The drum ensemble opened the fête with a parade through the cafe and back into the street with a song and drumming they had written. Afterwards, a Brazilian-French guitarist and his drummer and one other musician entertained us for hours. There were veggie burgers and freshly baked rolls from the bakery, and lots of dancing under the starlight. One evening during our last week there, Mathilde had us all for dinner at the cafe, mostly to thank Paula for the Naughty Carrots drum ensemble. We ate outdoors across the street from the cafe with several salads, each one more tasty than the last. There's a short video on the left.
De la nuit. Je me fais sucer la friandise, je me fais caresser le gardon, je me fais empaiser la chemise, je me fais picorer le bonbon, je me fais frotter la péninsule, je me fais béliner le joyau, je me fais remplir le vestibule, je me fais ramoner l'abricot, je me fais farcir la mimolette, je me fais couvrir le ribambin. Je me fais gonfler la mouflette, je me fais donner le picotin, je me fais la nuit, je me fais foyer le cœur fendu, je me fais tailler la pelisse, je me fais planter le mont velu. Okay, keeps on going.
I should have said before, it's a dirty song that people who knew French understood, but alas, I didn't know French. The woman at the far end of the table is Mathilde's mother, and she is also the mayor of Marnay. Those salads were so wonderful on such a hot day, and there I am, chowing down. Another lovely thing about Marnay is that it actually got dark at night. It is farther north than Tacoma, so evenings in June were even longer than here in Western Washington. Just living there was one of the highlights of the residency for me. There are no stores in Marnay, so Guillaume took us shopping once a week on Saturdays. Only 3 people could ride in the garden vehicle, so it was Paula, Guillaume, and me that went together. First, we stopped at the Saturday market for cheese, meats, creme fraiche, melons, raspberries, and vegetables. And then we headed to the chain grocery store, the Intermarché. There was an amazing selection between the 2 places, and it was fun to see what each of us had discovered when we got back to Maison Verte. Paula learned that there were weekend flea markets, the Brocon. I found white asparagus and yellow leather gloves. Paula had a haul from everyone, and she used several of the things she found in her Seine collections and her installation at the church. One of the cultural differences for me was the use of shutters. I had guessed that they were used for privacy, protection from storms, and to keep the heat in during the cold weather. I found out the hard way that they're also used to keep heat out in hot weather. To keep heat out, yeah, that's it. So on the left, that's my bedroom window. And on the right is the theater in the Marnay-sur-Seine. It's the town where we went to the market and grocery shopping. I thought it was all closed up because that's what it looked like to me. Then I learned that they were just keeping it cool. This is the poster that Guillaume had made for the reception to show the work that all 4 of us had made during our residencies. All aspects of the project came together for me at the reception. My work, my cohorts and their work, the garden, and the people of the village. On the right, Guillaume is introducing us 4 artists. These are Paula's Seine collections made up of items she found and then created compositions, and then she photographed them. In the photograph on the right, the middle row are all perfume bottles or parts of perfume bottles. These are 2 of Jenny's final prints. She cut stencils using the outline of leaves she found in the garden. In the lower left corner of the print on the left, you see prints she made based on the pattern of the tiles on the floor of her studio. She created the type she used her words in her work. And on the left, she's added the words, the rains of spring. On the right, she cut out individual petals for the poppies and sewed them to the surface of the print. These are Ashley's paintings and subtractions. He found several old tools in one of the sheds in the garden and made painting and drawings of them. In the afternoon of the day where we had the presentation, Ashley walked out the door and said, "I'm going to go gather rocks to keep to display my artwork." My book was displayed front and center. It was quite an honor. On the right, I enjoyed talking with Guillaume about my prints. He looked intently at my prints and seemed to like touching the pages. He is a gardener, after all. I made the decision to allow people to touch my book. There's nothing like holding a book and turning the pages. The woman on the right was Jenny's friend and mentor from the University of Mississippi. She and her husband had retired to Marnay a few years earlier, and I was curious how she would react to my work. I really liked seeing that smile. After the reception, Paula invited everyone to the church to see her installation. Over the few weeks, I had enjoyed hearing her different ideas of how to display the panels holding the photographs of one of her friends making the gestures that we evoked from her poem, The Stolen Thing. Her photographs are attached to garden fabric she found at the hardware store. The materials for the frames were from her finds in Paris and the weekend flea markets. Here you see two of the panels in place at the church. There are many benefits of an artist residency for me. One is that working outside my comfort zone is a good thing. It challenges me to be more considered in my actions. It means working with limited tools and materials within a set time frame and within an unknown space. It's an interruption of my routine in a good way. My habits were missing and I needed to evaluate needs differently. Certainly meeting new people is a huge benefit. Being with other artists around the clock and having an exchange of ideas is helpful in understanding more about my work and why I choose to do it. We also learn from each other. It's an opportunity to focus on my work with few other responsibilities and an opportunity for growth in a way I have a hard time imagining obtaining any other way. There are also the benefits of an artist residency as travel. You have a home base that is safe and people who speak English. There are all the usual benefits of travel, plus it's wonderful to actually live and work for a few weeks in another place. Shop for food, visit the hardware store, interact with local people and get around on buses and trains. You can also make side trips. All of us did this during the time we were in Marnay. I took 3 days and headed to Troyes for their half-timbered buildings, Toul Museum and Cathedral, and also some French food. Then I went to Reims for a champagne tour and the huge cathedral with the Chagall windows. Choosing an artist residency is made fairly easy using the Res Arts website. All the people I asked about how they look for residencies had used this search engine. You can see on the left all the different ways you can look for a residency. I especially like the one where you choose the country you're going to. And just a little bit above all those selections, they have a click here for just seeing the open calls for residencies. I'd like to talk about the application process. Once you've chosen the residency you'd like to request, you'll find an application form on that residency's website. The application form will ask for your name, your address, the dates you wish to be there, and also a second choice for dates. They'll want a letter of intention stating the nature of the project you propose to work on at the residency. They ask for photographic documentation of your work. They may ask for a CV or resume or an artist statement. They'll want a copy of your passport or ID card. And if you're accepted, they'll want a copy of a certificate of health insurance. I found the application process to be very positive. I began to see my work in more broad terms. The themes, the types of structures I'm drawn to, and a vision of my work in a bigger context and as a complete body. This is the end of my talk. Thanks again for joining us, and I believe Lucia will read your questions and comments now.
Okay, we do have one one question in the chat room already. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Okay. This is from Kristen. She wants to know what kind of ink or paint did you use for your prints?
It's a water-based printer's ink. Actually, the cheapest stuff they had it in the store.
And then you printed 2 layers. So you did the print first and then the ghost print. Did you use different paper for the first print?
Yes, I did. I used throwaway paper because I wasn't going to use those at all.
Okay.
But then some of them were beautiful and I kept them and I made a small book out of them.
So Dorothy wants to know.
It's better. I was going to be upset if you threw them away.
let's see, Dorothy wants to know whether the residency covered any of your costs or how much it cost.
Well, no, they didn't cover any of my costs. It was €400 for the month being there. And you had to pay for your transportation there and back and all of your food and any of the other things you did there. I know there are some residencies that will pay a portion. And I also know there are grants available. The first residency I went to, I spent, I don't know, maybe 4 hours or so searching around on the internet for different grants. And I found that there are some available and I probably would have qualified, but at that point I kind of gave up. I was more interested in getting my application completed and being accepted.
So Kate wants to know, what was the name of the binding that you used on the book?
Oh, it's the crown binding. It's named by Haiti Kyle, so just the crown. And when you look at the top of the book, you see why she calls it that. You fold down the edge of the concertina fold, and they all go the same way, and it ends up being just a very beautiful pattern, looking like a crown.
Let's see. What kind of paper did you use?
Oh, the interior pages, I used the Kozuke that I ordered from Linda Marshall with Washi Arts. I was really fortunate that she'd given a workshop, just a few months before I was going to France. And I had a chance to ask her what paper she would recommend for gel printing. And she recommended this particular paper. I chose the ivory color. It's a little more along my color palette. And for the covers, when I was at the art supply store in Paris, there was a really nice young woman who was also an artist who helped me find the paper. And she said, well, what was I looking for? And I said, I was looking for something really tough and that it would make sounds when you waved it in the air. And she looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, it ended up being a very heavy watercolor paper. And I think that's why I had the trouble that I did with the creeping spine when I folded just the concertina part. But it worked out. I guess one thing about the tough paper is that it will stand by itself.
So Kristen wants to know, what was the final dimension of your book?
Oh, it's 9 inches tall and it's a little bit shy of 6 inches wide.
And then how many folios?
I believe that's 16. Each book has 32 prints in it. So yeah, 16. It's a beautiful structure. You don't need to glue the pages in. The folds on the edges hold that interior paper. I used little dots of glue because I knew that my book was going to be outdoors at the reception. But that's the only glue I've used.
So Pat Chupa wants to let everybody know that in the book that Art of the Fold, it's on page 82, the crown structure. So if you get that book, Art of the Fold by Haiti Kyle, you can see what Anne did. And then we have another question from Debbie Commodore. You shared some of your challenges and your successes. What was your most delightful surprise from the experience?
I think with the frustration of messing up my second plate, I just, I kind of lost faith in the project. And when the prints turned out from using that sheet gelatin, when they turned out even more beautiful than the gelatin I'd brought from home, that was a beautiful surprise. And I got back into the whole idea of the project after that.
So Bonnie wants to know, if you didn't speak French, Did you have a hard time communicating with the people in the village?
Yes, I did. I had tried to learn French. I started about 7 or 8 months before I was going to be going. And so I'd learned to say about 3 things. So one of the first mornings I was there in Marnay, I came bounding out of the house. I was going to go take a walk around the village. And a woman across the street was there tending her garden. And I was like, bonjour, madame. And she looks up and she starts talking to me a mile a minute. And I couldn't understand a thing she said. And I couldn't make it known that I didn't know any French. She was just having a wonderful time. The only time that it was a problem, I was going to mail my tools back. And I went to the post office in the Marnay-sur-Seine. And I was so used to people in Marnay speaking English that I just presumed they would also speak English in the post office. They didn't. And I just felt terrible that I hadn't learned enough to communicate with them. But it was nice. I could look up the size box I wanted before I went, and they asked me, we could understand a little bit. These were older women. They're not my age, but almost. And one of them had Google Translate on their phone, and she brought that out. And I was like, gee, I should have had that. But it all worked out. She gave me the forms I needed to fill out. I took those back to my studio, filled out the forms in English. And then I looked at the forms some more, and I thought, I bet they want this in French. And I only had the one set of forms. So when I went back to the post office, I wrote out all my questions in French and handed that to the nice people there. And they gave me a new set of forms. I filled those out in French. I brought all my cheat sheets, and it actually turned out to be one of the more pleasant encounters I had. That they were so sweet and nice to me. I think that might have been a small drawback to Marnay, was that most of the younger people spoke English well, and most of the older residents didn't. And so that meant I ended up speaking to the same younger people, which was good. But I just felt I would have enjoyed it more if I'd known French.
So Paula, Janine, could you unmute yourself and talk a little bit about what it was like working with Anne in residency? Are you there?
Hello, everybody. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. And first of all, I loved the presentation. I felt like I was there, and I really needed to take that trip right now, because now my life consists of the 10 blocks between my home and my studio, and I don't go into Manhattan anymore. So this was like having this beautiful trip to France just dropped into this afternoon here in New York. It's just great. And when I worked with Anne, I learned several things in the residency from her, which is the thing about an arts residency or an arts community, like it seems that you have so beautifully going on in your organization, is that you get that cross-pollination that starts to happen. And especially when it comes to solving a problem, it may not be that you're working on exactly the same discipline, but learning how to face a problem and to face failure can really be illuminating. Like when Anne told the story about how the gelatine plate broke, I was there when that happened. And she has a beautiful temper, when she gets upset, she really expresses it. And the thing just broke, yet she solved the problem by printing with what she had. So it was great to see her solve that and work through that. And it has inspired me since then, because I think that part of being an artist is being courageous enough to fail. You know what I mean? And then try it again. And Anne has taught me that so much. And both Anne and my other two partners in the residency that they had such a way of approaching their work, because everybody has their own discipline that you develop and how you approach your creative work, you know, whatever your rituals are or your timing is. But it was wonderful. Some of the time she would just sit and look at the work and sit and look at the leaves and sit and look at the prints. I mean, it was 100 degrees. That I will also add. So sometimes we just sat. But when she would sit and look, it was that deep observation that I think artists do best. That when you don't always have to work. Sometimes you just sit and you reflect on the world that you've built. And Anne clearly built her own world. I mean, she was doing monochromatic printing. She was only printing in that wonderful sepia type pumpkin color. You know, she developed her own language and stuck with it. So she didn't speak French, but she taught everybody her language by her dedication. And also, she's a wonderful photographer, may I add. I'm an extraordinary photographer, because we all went to the same town, the city/town of Troyes, Troyes. And I hardly took any photographs, but when Anne came back, the photographs were just breathtaking. I mean, this city of Troyes is this extraordinary medieval place with these tiny, tiny little alleyways, and just seeing how she photographed it made me feel like, wow, I really missed a lot, you know? But it was illuminating to be around her and to see her rhythms against mine, because I am like an Energizer bunny, you know? And then she also was extremely helpful to me. Like when I did my residency in the church, I had to make a choice. Would you go from right to left when you move through the panels, or from left to right? And I just asked Anne, because I knew that she would have an opinion and have the right information I needed to hear, you know? And she would just say, no, they should start and then move to the left. And it was so great to have someone in the creative enclave whose opinion I trusted so much, because I respected her art. So that's what I would have to say about Anne.
Thank you very much. So we have another question for you, Anne. Did the French people you met did they have any knowledge of book arts?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Because Jenny's friend was also named Paula, and having been the head of the art department in Old Miss, she knew about that. And I think another thing about Marnay is that they had residencies going on in that village for several years. And I think part of the reason they keep on doing it is they have all this influx of new people with new ways of doing things. And I found them very open to what I was doing. Nobody actually asked me what I was doing, or that sort of thing. They just looked at things, which I thought was just the right thing to do at the presentation.
Great. Well, does anyone else have any questions? Maybe you could just unmute yourself and give Anne some feedback on her presentation.
I have a question. Hi, I'm wondering how that work that you did has influenced your work since, if there's been other work you've done that pulls a thread from that residency.
Well, I hate to say that, no. I haven't done a lot of work since the pandemic, and I have some chores I have to do. With the addition of 4, I need to make clamshell boxes that they will go in. So I got as far as ordering the supplies. And I have had a couple of it. Well, I'm working on a pandemic book, and so that's kind of pulled me in that direction. I think kind of along the line of your question, though, is that my work is about structure. I'm a 3D kind of person. I kind of called myself 2D problematic over the years. So having these books turn out as well as they did, it kind of confirmed for me that just go with the structure. Don't get down on yourself for not doing all these beautiful, paintings and drawings inside. If you're about structure, just go with it. So I guess that's my takeaway.
Anyone else want to say anything?
I sent this to Anne privately, but I just really appreciate, besides her sharing about the residency, I felt like I just went on a little trip to France. And it's so sad right now that we can't travel. So that was really nice to go on a trip.
And I thought the way that you presented the photographs was great. Not too many, not too few, and not shown too quickly, so that we could really look deeply into them. Didn't everybody agree?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was really the right amount. Sometimes you see a presentation and you're glutted with too many images, or you don't get enough. I thought it was perfect.
That was 136 photographs.
Well,
And I have
a
a question. You touched on being able to see your body of work in a different way as a result of going on these. And I wondered if you could illuminate that a little bit more. Did you have a sense of a more of a way to see that you actually have a body of work that has a structure and a style and all of that goes with that? Was that reinforced by your experiences?
Definitely. It kind of goes along with my answer to Rochelle, that a workshop I took with Debbie Greenwood many years ago. She talked about an artist having a color palette. And, I didn't get it. I thought, what is she talking about? And then, recently, within the last couple of years, I have an album on my phone. So when I'm talking to somebody and then I say I'm a book artist and they say, what is that? I can show them a few books. Well, there's a lot of them in there by now. And I just look, when you're searching for something, you look through a whole bunch of images at once, and gee, there's my color palette. It's autumn, and the notion that it's just fine to go for structure. I think that was really important to me. I get down on myself because I don't stretch myself to, learn more surface design ideas. And I want to do that, but I don't have to do it, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does very much. Thank you.
Well, should we give Anne a round of applause?
Yes. Yay.
Thank you all very much. I enjoyed seeing all of you.
You're welcome. So I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. Anne, there's a lot of messages about you in the chat. So I know you haven't been reading it, but there's a lot of accolades about how much people are appreciating. So if you hang on a little bit while, don't leave the meeting. We'll go through that and look at them.
Oh, thank you.
And I just wanted to say that this is the first of what we hope will be many more presentations. And if you does anybody have suggestions, or would anybody like to learn how to be a host, or?
There, I want to jump in and say thank you, Lucia, for starting all this. I mean, this is wonderful.
I think what to me, Gudrun, which is so wonderful, is that we can have anyone from anywhere in the world
Mhm.
presenting. It just opens up possibilities that, you know, just hadn't considered before. So, and it shows also, it's a way of sharing the rich. We have a really great community. We have like 180 some people in our artist book group, and it's really great to be able to share with the country and internationally the great work that we're doing as well.
Lucia, I'd like to add to that, that I think that's one of the hidden blessings, if you will, of this time for us, is that we used to think, how are we going to be able to help support all of these different book artists all over from everywhere, and how can we have enough meetings and enough gatherings? And it's like, wow, what have we got now? We can do it virtually, and just it's much easier. It's fantastic.
I would like to thank Lucia for all
yes.
her help getting this presentation put together. We did a full walkthrough or read through or whatever it is twice, and she gave me all kinds of really helpful feedback. So thank you, Lucia.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to work with other people and also to teach people how to host a meeting. It's really not too hard. So, you know, if anyone wants to volunteer, you can let me know or let any of the board know. And I think it may be, you know, there's quite a few people who came today from, I think is it NORPAC or what is it, Bonnie?
Redwood.
Bonnie.
Norbag,
yeah. So they do
North Redwood Book Art Guild.
Yeah, so they do a lot of really cool things, and they're having their first workshop coming up this weekend, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's ways of sharing between book arts organizations too.
It's encouraging.
Anyone else have any comments before we sign off?
Tell everybody to stay tuned. Stay tuned to this station for more things.
We had a board meeting the other day. We've just gotten, I don't know, I think most of you know, we just got a $10,000 contribution for our 10th anniversary. So we'll be able to do many more things. We are thinking ahead. Because we couldn't have the exhibition this year in the same way we usually do, we're thinking about having some upcoming events around the work that people did for the exhibition. We also have a collaborative book project going on where people are making books and sending each other pages, and they've been traveling around. I think we have 36 of those books. And we have lots of ideas, but we'd love to have more input from our members. So